Okay, I'm so excited about this. I basically playing around with Grasshopper for a while. I know I've pushed it into C, I've pushed it into Python. I know I have to work generatively. I have to drive the data. What I've done here is, as we take a look, is here are old hopped up nodes that I can start to jazz this script up with. And they're pretty basic. They add one to numbers, they produce series and ranges, they find remainders, and I've got a bunch more hop nodes that I'm going to start jumping to down here. But I've prepped this one script, which basically it's a surface. You know, it's not that hard to understand. I've produced a very simple surface within here. What would help is if this wasn't on turntable, but either way, that surface is produced by interpolating curves that are extremely parametric to a gene pool. And I actually went in and I used the Dominion plugin that I wrote with Daniel Kristev, and Peter Davis is helping out, and the Dominion is growing. But you get a lot of data and basically playing the focal points of a random generated conic. So conic is produced by these coefficients and variables, and then all of a sudden I threw a little sine and cosine into them to jazz them up. So basically it's a very complex way of using a plugin to produce parametric surfaces. But that's about it. You can make a surface from two lines if you want in Rhino to make this work as well. Use a little isotrim to split it all up into parts. You can see the surface is pretty sweet, the lofted surface in there. And from that, I can use that as the orient tool to take a pretty simple geometry, which is in here, over here. It's not too much, drawn from a quad sphere. And if you know my past videos, this is kind of the way I like to experiment and play. And I'm just dividing surfaces, dividing points, orienting to other points, and then able to produce a pretty amazing piece of geometry. And so this alone as a Grasshopper standalone script to me is pretty interesting. But what you end up doing is you grab this entire script, which we're going to grab here and drag down here. And of course, it's going to fuzz out on me because it's like, well, how many things do you want me to do? This script itself would probably be good at this time. Actually, I think I'll click around and show you a few things. Obviously, there's the surface. There's a few orientation points which you can take a look at. There's the isotrim points. You can jump in here, see that surface. You can go on and see the divided points, nice points that are being generated from the surfaces. It's coming from that quad sphere. And sometimes I just like to select the whole kit and caboodle just so you see the geometries that's driving this. And to understand coding and scripting for me is I end up visualizing every single point and every single number. So what I can do is I can go into here and say, okay, which one of these nodes, left to right, the selection, would I like to copy? Now remember, all of these nodes are hopped up and drawing directly from my live GitHub feed. So I've got the turntable on. I'm slowing down the script quite a bit. I just asked it to do something probably while the turntable was going, so I probably need to leave that. And probably just doubling all those scripts and linking to my GitHub was probably not a great idea. I certainly should have deactivated them before doing it. So it shows you how complex your scripts and how much is tucked within here, even though it's kind of a basic little script on the side. Give me a second and I'll see what's going on. Okay, so it did take a while for those to double, and it'd probably be a pretty good idea to say, okay, maybe I want to use these scripts and bring them in here and see when they're in use. But it's probably a good idea not to double anything like that until you actually, of course, the washer and dryer started me crazy because my wife couldn't leave without making a bunch of noise. And kids are gone, and I can actually focus on this a little bit this morning before I cast metal. So basically, those are hopped up scripts that jump directly in to all these little functions that, since I'm learning the basics of what I want to do to jazz up the script to make this even more complex, when I start pulling C basic kind of Lego block scripts in here, this thing's going to just become a monster of a piece of architecture or structure. It's already complex enough, and it's being driven by gene pools, but just to stay with the form that I was happy with as that geometry, I think I will hit cancel on turntable if I can get it to stop. Basically, you see how it kind of tapers off to nowhere. It's a pretty nice, if you think about fabricating that, taking that fabrication, that's enough work in and of itself as a surface or a facade or whatever you're ending on thinking. But there's the object itself, complex. I can simplify it in the script, and I probably will reduce the number counts. But what I've done is I've also gone in and I've extracted all of these numbers. So I have a node that I can start inputting in data when it matches that data. When it matches that data type. And anyone who knows C# knows that it's extremely data sensitive. Now, all of these nodes type sensitive. So when I go in here, you can see it's going right to my GitHub page. which is where I've shown in my past videos in this series. So everything's up and running and ready to go. But what would I do if I wanted to grab some more stuff? Well, I do have a series of nodes. So what I do is I just kind of grab one of these and copy it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I'm going to grab 6 more. I'll set this one over here, and I'll just do a little sorting. And I'll say, okay, what is the first one I want to kind of hop to? And what I'll probably do is just copy that again because it shows a new way of making. These nodes were made, and now I'm going to make some new ones. This is just the way I kind of keep track and make sure I do everything. I'm going to right-click on here, go to Path, and find that path. And of course, it's on my other GitHub, so I have to jump back into my GitHub, go to my latest repository, which are my hopped basic C# scripts. Going down here, I already did all the D's, which are really basic, but here's D3, D3, D7. I didn't use them all, but let's try an if statement. So let's grab here, right-click and take a shared link, close that up for a second, and then let's paste that in here and say, okay, what we have now is an if statement. If I'm given a number and another number, it will produce it will basically put out X is smaller than Y. So let me just see what happens when I grab, because some of these nodes aren't going to be playful, but you have this ability to get into some logic that's better served in programming than it actually is in, let's see what we're actually outputting. Yeah, it's just a word. It's just X is equal to Y. So I've made a list of ones that actually think. And within here, I think the first one I'm going to use is disjunction, conjunction, and negation. So that's not one I actually want to bring this to. So I probably will take that and say, no, let's grab another hops, and let's go back into our file. And I've made a little note of the ones I like. And the disjunction, conjunction right here is the one I actually want, because that was a node I thought I could kind of envision as geometry or influencing geometry, and that's what I'm thinking about this. So all these files are available to you as quick as they are to me on GitHub. It's an open source. Just go in here and check them out and see if they come in handy. We'll grab this one down here, and we will hit a path. And I'm kind of being creative here because I've got a whole lead up into here, and we're already 7 minutes in. But you can see what happens. It takes a Boolean and another Boolean and says if it's and or not or true. So if I could get some data, that possibly comes in somehow in my script on a number slider and does 1 or 0 or produces a Boolean, I can sit here and output a string of data. Of course, I'm going to need both. Boolean 1 and 2. I'm going to basically say if one's true, the other one's true, so I can produce kind of conditional true and false or statements, negation. And what happens is this ends up being pretty cool data to drive out into, let's see if I get lucky with this, and pull it out into numbers. And what I can use drive that data from this 0, 1, 0, 1 pattern. And of course, if I think about that and I have some data coming in that's and or, it's going to change that data. And this is just one way to think about it. Like, what if I wanted to drive, but I don't have to write in C script because everything's being taken care of in here for you. So you don't have to write in Python, you don't have to write in C. You just have these kind of custom little building block nodes in C that I think about building geometry and amping things up. So I may end up using that node. I'm not too excited about it because it's not, well, it is producing numbers and it's coming from numbers. It's just coming from really basic numbers. And I've got a lot of trig and I don't have a lot of ones and zeros in here. So that might be helpful. The next one that I list in here that's kind of useful is my F loop. So I'm going to go into here. I'm going to go back into here. I'm going to jump back into here. And I've said for these ones, I think the best one, actually, I think what I have going on, basic C scripts. Let me just do back into here into my repository and see what I have. Hopped up C#. I guess that's it. But I don't want to use all of these. So I think the next one I'm actually playing with is the F loops is what I just pulled out. That was conjunction. This is the F01 loop. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to do the link and I'm going to see how lucky I get with this script. So you really have to, pick up the Lego piece and play with it and see if it's something you can use. So this one's, again, this is pretty nice. So I can just grab an iteration number that's integer based. This should tell you that it doesn't tell you anything anymore. It's just you kind of have to know how to read enough about C to know that iterations are going to probably imply integers instead of doubles. and then I'm going to produce a loop out of here. And this one's pretty basic. It's actually just kind of looping through and giving you a series from 0 to 6. So you're understanding series and other loops, but you actually have this little component that just does that. Any number you have gives you a nice stream of loop through it. I think what's going to happen here is that one's pretty interesting. Let's grab this one and let's see how many loop examples I was playing with that I thought would be handy. So we'll go back to here, we'll go down to F. There's probably quite a few iterations. This is an even number loop. So that might be interesting to think of playing with. I'm going to copy that link, close that out, come back here and set my file directly to that path, to my GitHub. Like I said, they're not on my computer. Well, they're technically on my computer, but these ones don't have to be. So this is another one that I can grab a number, integer, and I can see what kind of is produced as an even numbered loop. So this is a way of calling out data and not having to use graph mapper or use shift lips or relative items or masks or anything like that. You're actually using a script that does exactly that. So when you take this count up, it'll just count your even numbers. So it's an even integer being produced. So that one I probably will use. Let's grab another one and see what other one I said to do. We'll do F4 and F11 just to see if we can make use of these two. So jump back into here. Go back in. Of course, this is convoluted. Everything gets layered and layered and layered, but your mind is understanding C. You know how much you want to know about scripting it. The scripts work. They're pretty general. They're all online for free, and there's this weird thing happening with GitHub and Copilot that as long as you know what you want to do, those scripts are being generated for you. And Hops, I think, is really moving into that kind of Copilot attitude that you know what you want to go and get. So let's grab 4, which is change flow with braces. I'm not sure if I actually want that one. That's E4. I do not want that one. I want F4. I can just tell by the name of that. It's like, that just sounds dangerous. Break continue loop with component message. So let's take a look at this one. Right click, copy link, close this, go back into here. Pretty simple when you've got hopped up scripts. You just hope that, you know, you can download them while they're there, but you can also just reference them. I'm not going to take them offline. So you can see that there's iterations and then a less than conditional, which is very nice. So if I grab this, but then I set a conditional that is relative to that, if less than 4, then I've got a very nice little script that can start controlling my numbered data. And so it's only going to run 0 and 2. So you can start thinking about distances. Even though they're integers, you might consider it as list items because they'll come out as integers. Where could I use that? I definitely think I will. And then the last one to try and apply to the script, which I may or may not do right now. Take these ones off because I only used 4. This is a nice example of getting all of these scripts up and running. They're not horizontal, but once I figure them out, let's go back into here. Let's go down to F11 right here, and we'll get through all of these, and then we'll do a whole series on the geometries of Raya ISA, which will actually be much more complex. So we're going to join here, and we're not going to be dealing with numbers so much. We start pushing, pulling geometries iteratively and recursively and with C programming, which could be very interesting. And so I'm building up my mind to visualize this C script as influencing geometry the same way I came to understand masks in split tree and relative items, offsets, and certainly path mapper. But this to me seems much more fruitful, and once I have my inventory and my toys to play with, I can actually start constructing very unique geometries and architectures. So this one is a numbered list. So if we had a numbered list, I think what we'll do whenever I see list is it's like I immediately jump in and I'm like, well, that sounds like a gene pool. So I'm going to put in a numbered list, do a varied count. I don't know if it has to be integers or not, but it's sometimes good practice to just bring things back to an integer, take your count down, make it range, 10 numbers kind of shooting around and doing their thing. Actually, I think I could probably leave it as a 100 numbers between 1 and 100 for this script. So you can always go into the gene pool, a powerful tool if you put it at the other end of Galapagos. And then you have a multiplier, which can be 1, 2, 3, or whatever you want. You can put in multiple numbers. You're going to produce another list over here. And let's see what's coming out. Sometimes the list gets so jumbly and it's not sorted and you don't know how many's in that list and you have to scroll down. This is when you start using the path mapper. So not path mapper, tree. Oh my goodness, param viewer. I can't believe I forgot that. So 10 images. So this is another one that's going to actually take that data and do a multiplier on each one of those data, which isn't so hard if you think about it as a node, but things can start to get pretty complex, especially if you start to use things like another one of these. And all of a sudden, it's the same thing with multiplier. You just end up with all these running as different data. So you can really jive the numbers that are driving your geometries. So what I have here is all these nodes up and running. But what I want to do is grab them, and I'm going to disable them. I'm going to copy and paste them, and I'm just going to put them up here as these kind of scripts here, 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 and here, because I have 5 that I want to actually play with. This is where they came from, kind of applying them. So I'm just going to put those into a little group so you remember. Hang on a second, it's getting mad at me. And then I'll probably disconnect this number slider. I'll probably just take another 7 component here. No, that's not going to work. I'll probably have to just take my time to just disconnect these up here. It's just no big deal. I hate to waste time, but sometimes I waste time, and that's just life. Just to get these components so they're working and they're linked, but there's a list obviously telling by the lines. You know, you have to have some familiarity with Grasshopper and know the basics of it to get these up and running. And here they are, all of these nice nodes. We can put them on and hit enable, and they're all ready to go to be applied at some point into this script. So I'm going to take these guys down here, try and stay consistent with what I did above. These were the ones that initially were made. These are the next set that are coming in. So sorry if this is a little jumbly. Any one of these nodes now is kind of interesting to think about. How can I jive those up and get them running? So looking back up to it, I would say hop to it. That's exactly what we're going to do. Taking all this data and probably take that in and say where and when I could get all these nodes tucked into this script. And I'll do that and make this hopefully something interesting. We've been going 17 minutes. Let's see if I can figure something out, and then I'll come back and share with you what I've done. I kind of like it. It's a really nice way of building and getting organized and using some incredibly complicated scripts. But in the end, I really just have a surface from lines. I have an isotrim, a quad sphere, and an orient. But with a little bit of these other scripts, this can really become some truly magical stuff. And actually, probably, I already know what they kind of do. I don't need that. But you'll see that I'm plugging through with an example. This list will build. I'll gain more and more insight into what these little tiny scripts do and where to apply them. And my scripts will become like up on, you know, charged, double charged, like a horse shot full of, you know, drugs before a race, and see what happens. Very excited about this and where it's going. 18 minutes. Thanks for watching.